Okay, picture this. It's the final 15 minutes of the match. The score is tied, everyone's exhausted, and every single touch of the ball could be the one that changes everything. This is where heroes are born, but it's also where seasons, and sometimes entire careers, just end.
You've seen it, right? A star player is sprinting for a through ball, nobody's near them, and they just pull up. Or a simple turn, something they've done 1,000 times, ends in a twisted knee. It feels like just bad luck, totally random. But what if it's not? What if there's a predictable, scientific reason this keeps happening in the dying minutes of a game? Let's get into it.
And look, the numbers don't lie. Study after study on elite football shows this really clear, statistically significant spike in severe, non-contact injuries right there in the last 15 minutes. So it's not just a feeling we have watching the game, it's a stone-cold fact. As that clock ticks towards 90, the risk of a serious breakdown just skyrockets. So what's really going on? Well, it's a story of two things failing at the exact same terrible time.
Okay, so the first failure is biological. It's the story of a high-performance machine, the player's own body, being pushed way past its limits. Think about a player's muscles like the suspension on a race car. For the first hour or so, they're perfectly tuned, absorbing every single jolt and impact from the ground. But after 75 minutes of all-out sprints, sudden stops, and hard landings, that suspension is basically shot. The muscles can't protect the chassis, the bones, the ligaments, and the joints anymore. And this chart, wow, it shows you the brutal numbers behind that feeling of fatigue. I mean, look at this. A player's maximum force drops by a quarter. Their energy reserves are down by more than a third. But the most important one here is neuromuscular control. That's the super fast link between your brain and your body. And by this point, it's compromised. So even if the brain screams the right signal to brace for a landing, the muscles are just too slow and too weak to get the message in time. And if you think it's just about feeling tired, get this number. This spike of over 200% in creatine kinase, that's a direct measurement of muscle cells literally being ripped apart. It's actual physical damage. So now we have a player who is incredibly vulnerable. But that's only half the story. So what's the second failure? This is where it gets really interesting. It's not in the player's body. It's right under their feet. The very ground they're playing on can actually turn against them, becoming this hidden, dangerous opponent. And this is the perfect storm I was talking about. The player's built-in biological shock absorbers are failing at the exact same time the surface starts hitting back with bigger, harder impacts. And this happens in a few really specific, nasty ways. So, problem number one, the fast synthetic pitch. The ones with a lot of bounce. Early in the game, a fresh player can use that elastic spring to launch themselves forward. But for a tired player, whose reflexes are slower, that energy comes back way too fast. It jolts the leg before the muscles can even prepare, sending a shockwave right through the joints instead of giving a helpful push. Then you've got problem number two, the old, worn-out synthetic pitch. Over months and years, all that rubber infill gets packed down, it gets hard, the Gmax value, which is just a fancy way of saying how much impact shock there is, it goes through the roof. The field goes from being nicely cushioned and safe to something that's dangerously hard, almost like running on pavement. But this third problem? This is the sneakiest one of all. On certain hybrid pitches that have a rigid base, all the pounding from players running causes the sand infill to vibrate and wiggle its way down into the drainage holes in the backing. This creates what's called a clamping effect, basically locking everything in place and making the surface harder and harder as the game is being played. So this is the absolute key takeaway. The pitch is getting physically harder at the same time the players are getting physically weaker. The surface that felt perfectly fine at kickoff has slowly turned into a dangerous, rigid slab by the final whistle. The Gmax can jump from a safe 85G to over 120G. It's a trap, and it springs when players are their absolute most vulnerable.
So, if the problem is a playing surface that becomes unstable and betrays the athlete, then the solution has to be a pitch that stays a stable, predictable ally from the first minute to the very last. And this is exactly where a system like POWERgrass comes in. Remember that sneaky clamping effect we just talked about? Well, this unique elastic backing you see here is specifically engineered to stop that sand from ever migrating. It prevents that compaction, which means the safe, consistent pitch you start on is the exact same pitch you finish on.
I mean, let's just put them side by side. It's pretty stark. While that rigid hybrid pitch hardens up to a dangerous Gmax of over 120G, POWERgrass just stays in that sweet spot, a consistent, safe level between 75 and 85G. Its energy return doesn't become a harmful jolt, it stays optimal, working with the player, never against them. But you know, this is about so much more than just preventing injuries. This is about creating a real tangible advantage. It's about having more gas in the tank when the game is on the line.
And it all comes down to this idea of optimal energy return. A truly great surface doesn't just absorb the impact of your foot hitting the ground. It gives that energy back at the perfect instant, right when you're pushing off to take your next step. It's actually helping you move, which means every single stride costs you less energy.
So what's that look like in a real game? Well, it means players are under less physical stress the whole time. They're saving energy, which means they've got more power and more stamina for those critical final minutes. And hey, when your body isn't screaming at you, your mind is clearer. It all adds up to a real, measurable edge, especially for teams that get to train and play on this surface all the time.
It's the energy you need for that last-ditch tackle to save a goal, the explosive jump for that game-winning header, the power for a spectacular bicycle kick in the 89th minute. The foundation for moments like these is a surface that protects and empowers an athlete, even when they're running on empty.
It really makes you ask a new kind of question. We spend so much time talking about training, nutrition, recovery, all that stuff. But what if the most overlooked factor in winning games and protecting players is the very ground they play on? What if the field isn't just a stage for the game, but a crucial piece of high-performance equipment?